All right, good afternoon, coaches. It is 2 p.m. on the dot, so we're definitely going to get started with the powerlifting coaching webinar. My name is Irvin Humphrey. I'm the Director of Sports Training and Competition. Jennifer Grantham is also on, who's the Director of Field Services, Initiatives, and Volunteers, and you will hear our voice during the call as well. But we definitely have a special guest today. Before I introduce Mr. Todd Youngblood, definitely say during the call if you have any questions and answers, please make sure you put them in the Q&A box at the bottom. We definitely want a lot of questions to come in because Todd is definitely a wealth of knowledge within the powerlifting realm. So just real fast before we start, this slide right here, Special Olympics Arkansas, we have 11 staff members. We have 15,000 athletes that we serve with 13,000 unified young athletes. We also have 3,000 unified partners. One of the big numbers that we definitely love is we have 5,000 volunteers, and that's thanks to all you amazing coaches out there. Also, we are free to our athletes, which means there's no charge for any competition within Special Olympics Arkansas. On that right-hand side of the slide, you also see the number 1970, which was the year Special Olympics Arkansas was established, with the first games taking place in Conway. Also, 1970 means this year we're celebrating 50 years of Special Olympics Arkansas. Unfortunately, we couldn't celebrate the way we would love to, but we're still celebrating and definitely going to look to do some big things here in the near future for everyone. But so let's get started with powerlifting. I want to introduce Mr. Todd Youngblood. And here's a little background on Mr. Todd. He started coaching in 1991. He began the powerlifting program in 1995 at K Center in Georgia. He was the USA Games powerlifting coach in Iowa in 2006. He was also a powerlifting official in Nebraska, New Jersey, and Seattle USA Games, and also he was a World Games powerlifting coach. I won't dive into it. I bet there's a lot more slides that we can add about Mr. Todd, but I'm just going to turn it over to you, Todd. And again, remember, coaches, if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box, and we will get back to you, guys. So here you go, Todd. And once again, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
And Jennifer asked me to help out today. I'm excited to do this. And so if you have any questions, like you said, ask. I'm learning every day. You don't hurt my feelings if you ask a question, if you disagree with something. Just here to help everybody, and anything we can do. Jennifer has my contact, and Irvin does too. So after the day, if you need anything, just follow up with me. I'll be glad to help any way I can. All right, first slide, the official events. I know in the state of Arkansas, y'all don't do the squats. I will make a few mentions or information about squats in a little bit, but bench press, we do the deadlift, and then you have the double combination. You do have events where you can do bench press only. Just know also while I'm talking, each state does things different. So if I say something that your state doesn't do, I apologize for that. I might say some things that we do in Georgia in the national games, but you can do a bench only. You can go on to the next slide. All right, the equipment, you had the little picture on the side, but most of you know the equipment we have the bars, your bench, your collars, and your weights. One thing that a lot of people do not know, we do have a 15-kilo bar. If we have lifters starting out and they can't do the bar itself, when you go to the USA Games, some of your states have them. You do have a 15-kilo bar that you can use. One thing that I want to make sure everybody understands is when you're benching or doing any lift whatsoever, deadlift, make sure those collars are on. Teach your athletes to put those collars on. They go in the gym sometimes and they'll see other people lifting and they don't put the collars on. And that's a number one thing that we need to let them know. That's a safety hazard. Make sure those collars are always on those bars. Uniforms. They talk about lifting suits. These are suits that you can, the wrestling singlets, you can get them just about any sporting goods stores that order things for you. You can sometimes find them at your larger stores, your Dick's, Hibbett's, those type sporting goods stores. But a lot of times you have to order them. They come up under the wrestling singlets. You can get all kind of singlets out there. They're out there. There are numerous ones. One thing I will tell you from experience, and I know this probably has nothing to do with powerlifting, but stay away from your bright colors. Use your darker colors. We want to help our athletes have great self-esteem. And when we start working with some of our athletes that are heavier athletes, the dark blues, the blacks, those suits work much better. I'll tell you from experience, my first year doing powerlifting at K Center, we used some bright green ones. We look like Kermit the Frog. So I learned real quick, but there's no one singlet name that you have to use for Special Olympics. If you start going into USAPL and some of the other events, they do have certain companies you have to use their singlets, but that's something you can look at as you advance up with your lifters. Your undershirts, you remember to follow Special Olympics rules about your logos and your advertisements, but you have to wear an undershirt up under your singlets. You did have an option at one time with the deadlift that the males did not have to wear a t-shirt up under their singlet, but you have to now. You have to wear that. Your shirts, like we said earlier, they cannot be the tight-fitting supportive shirts. That has to be a single-ply material that's not supporting. We don't wear shorts in powerlifting. You have to wear a singlet. You do have situations if somebody has religious preferences that you get with your state and, something you saw on the state level. Briefs, it has changed. It always was said that you had to wear tighty whities or white briefs. That is no longer the truth. You can wear undershorts of basically any kind, as long as they're not supportive. But the only thing is they cannot hang out from under your singlet. When you move up to the USA Games, to the World Games, nothing can hang outside that singlet. So whatever kind of undergarment that person wears, it has to stay up under the singlet. The lifting belts, if you go in your rules, they'll tell you specific width. I should have wrote that down right here. Jennifer's got on one of the slides with the rules that she's going to get out to everybody. The biggest thing with the belts is do not, and you cannot wear the belts that have the pads in the back of them. If you show up outside of the state games and go to a USA Games or something like that, if that pad is in there, they're going to take a knife and cut that pad out before that belt can be used. So make sure it's not too wide and it does not have the pad in the back. Also, another one we're starting to see folks are trying to use is the one with Velcro. It cannot have a Velcro strap on it. So make sure you look through those rules and look at the specs on your lifting belts. If you have any questions, you're welcome to call, email me, whatever. But the belts are pretty easy to find. The easiest thing to do is look at is your width and make sure it doesn't have the pad in the back of it. Your wraps, for those that don't know, Special Olympics has gone to now, the rule has changed to we're completely raw. So there's no more, which y'all don't squat in your state, but you can't use a squat suit. You can't use a bench shirt, which we never could with bench. And another thing you can't do anymore, you can't use knee wraps if you're squatting. But the things you can use wrist wraps and you can use knee sleeves. Now, why do we put knee sleeves on here if y'all don't squat in the state of Arkansas? It's because some folks use knee sleeves when they deadlift. So you can use the knee sleeves. The only thing in the rule it talks about is the athlete should be able to pull them up naturally like they would if they were putting on their clothes. In other words, they're saying that they shouldn't have to have help. Well, with some of the athletes we have and we work with, some of them we have to help with their putting on their clothing. So if it takes that help, that's fine. But they can use knee sleeves on a deadlift. Your socks, you have to have the long length socks that come up to the knees. It has to cover the shin on your deadlift. That is for safety, because if you're doing a deadlift correctly, that bar is going to ride up your shins. And a lot of times it'll scratch and cause you to bleed. So you have to have the socks that are long and come up to right below the knees. On shoes, we've got into some discussion before and controversy on what shoe. The rule says it has to be an athletic shoe. We used to have people try to wear boots, and people would tell them that boots were not athletic shoes, and they would come back with for a lumberjack, boots are athletic shoes. So I would have to get with you on that, but most of the time you don't see folks wearing boots anymore, but they wear flat bottom tennis shoes. The ones that a lot of folks are going to are the old style Converse, because it has a good flat sole. Your basketball shoes have good flat soles on it. You don't want an athletic training shoe, a cross country shoe, or running shoe, because that bottom is rounded. And so when they stand up on the deadlift, they tend to lose their balance. So just make sure you got a good athletic shoe that's a flat bottom. One of the shoes that we use here that's easy to find and economically affordable is your wrestling shoes. They have a good flat bottom and have a good grip. Some of the things for prevention of injuries: make sure before you start your workouts, we always warm up and stretch. A lot of times we have a bad habit here at the K Center. We're still right now open with the COVID virus going on. We still work every day. We're still lifting every day. I'm fortunate I can bring folks in that go out on crews, and one of the things we still do is work out every day before we go out on our jobs. So you have to be careful that we don't come in and just start working out and not stretching. It's easy to do because we're trying to get our day started. But when you set up your program, your lifting program, make sure you build in that time that you warm up and do some stretches to get everybody ready to lift. If you're doing bench that day, warm up your upper body. Just do things to make sure they're ready to go so you don't pull a muscle or somebody gets hurt and then they're out 2 or 3 months. Proper clothing, even in your training, if you can wear the singlets, that's wonderful. But if not, shorts. Do not wear blue jeans. A lot of times I have folks come in and try to use blue jeans or wear blue jeans when they're lifting. And the problem you get into is, if you're with us, if we're squatting with y'all, it will be your deadlift. The deadlift, those blue jeans are going to bind you, and it's going to cause those blue jeans will rub them, cause rashes on the inner thighs. So, try to really encourage them to wear shorts. You can wear warm-up pants, something very loose fitting. The spotting part, go ahead and from the beginning, teach your athletes to be spotters. A lot of times you don't have all the additional extra coaches around. So it's very important that your athletes know how to spot. On the bench press, make sure you have one behind for the lift off. If you're not comfortable, or if you don't have an athlete and lift off, you as the coach can do the lift off, but then use your athletes as the side spotters. And the same thing with your deadlifts. Even though, a lot of folks think, okay, deadlifts, I don't need spotters. But if you notice in the slide right here, we got Garrett from the World Games. The gentleman is standing behind him. You have one that's behind him that's really blocked out. We have had before athletes will get up with the weight, and the weight get heavy and they lose their balance and fall backwards. So you do need spotters on deadlift. Not necessarily a side spotter, but for sure one behind them just to help them in case they lose their balance. Proper form. From the very beginning, make sure you start out with no weight. A lot of people want to go in there and put something on that bar, but you really need to start out when you're teaching form and technique. You start out with the bar itself. If you have an athlete that's just starting out and they can't handle the bar, you can use PVC pipes. You can use old broomsticks, but make them start out with something in their hands like the bar, but no weight, because you want to get good fundamentals and technique down first, because as you add weight, a lot of the times the heavier you get, your technique sometimes goes out the window. If you start out with technique from the very beginning, then they depend on that technique to get that lift up. As far as the equipment, there's all kind of equipment out there. The biggest thing that you need to have is the basics of the bar, the collars, and the weights. And for the deadlift, if you're doing bench, you're going to need a bench. Benches come all kind of shapes and sizes. There's no one set one. The one that we use here at the center and the one we use at the USA Games is a multiple piece of equipment. We had it set up for the bench, and we can take the seat out and use it for the squats. We're just fortunate we're able to purchase one of those. but you don't have to have that. I mean, you can have a regular bench and the bar and the weights, and you're fine. Safe lifting area. Make sure if you don't have your own place, when you go into the lifting area, the gym, wherever you're at, just like when, in any sport, this afternoon, if I go to the softball field, I'm going to go out on my softball field and make sure nobody left anything out there where somebody could get hurt. So same thing in that weight room. Make sure the weights have been put up so nobody's going to trip. Teach your athletes that you leave it cleaner than what you found it. You want to make sure that nothing's in the floor in the way. If you have some athletes that are in wheelchairs, you're going to make sure that that area is clear for them so they can get around freely like everybody else. So it's very important that you check the area out before anybody gets there. And you might even want to go ahead and set up your stations or whatever you're doing for that day before the athletes arrive. Overtraining. You can overtrain. Our athletes get excited. They see what they're doing. They see that little growth in their body. And so they want to lift every single day. Just make sure you're giving that muscle a rest. There are some lifters and there are some workouts out there where you can work every single muscle every day. What you don't hear about that is the fact that if I'm working legs and arms on the same day, one of them's my heavy day for the muscle and the other's the light day. So you might be doing heavy on your upper body on this day and then light on the legs. But the muscle has to have time to rest. So what we do is, and you'll see some workouts I'll show in a minute, we alternate days. We never work a muscle 2 days in a row. There's nothing that says you can't, but you need to give it rest by lightening up on what you do. Muscle, I'm sorry. Last thing, and I'll get you, Jennifer, just on muscle balance, and that's the same thing, is make sure you work the upper and the lower body to keep the athlete balanced. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you've got a question. In deadlift, can you use the wrist straps that go around the bar like the powerlifters use?
No, ma'am. You can the only wrist wraps are like the ones that Garrett has on in the picture. We use the red lines, but the wrap has to wrap, and then the rubber band that's on the thumb has to come loose. So only just wrist wraps, nothing that goes around the bar. All right, the sample workouts. This is something we use a lot here, and the reason for it is we use our workouts here at the Case Center as a warm-up for the day, also to get ready to go out and work. The good thing about it, I feel like our workouts every morning have helped us because it's cut down on workplace injuries. We have had, in my 26 years here, probably a handful of injuries at the most, and the injuries had nothing to do with them being awake, vibrant, and ready to go for the day. So I feel like our workouts in the mornings help us out. We're fortunate we can do that here, but these are the workouts we use, and we actually lift every single day of the week. All right. When I say that, a lot of people think that's too much, but we only work out for 30 to 45 minutes a day, and we concentrate on a single lift. What we have set up, and I use the same thing for my daughter that plays softball. We do a Monday, and Thursday is the same. So on Monday, like on the chart here, if we're doing squats, we might do heavy on Monday or light on Monday and then heavy on Thursday. You can fit that into your schedule however you want to. This is just a sample. There's tons of workouts out there. A lot of the athletes in schools, and we've used it here before too, do percentage workouts. You have to match your workout to your athletes and how much time you have. Right now, what we do is on Monday, we do our bench press. So on Mondays, we'll do our bench, we'll do flies, we'll do incline, and we do different types of bench. We might do a close grip and a wide grip. And then we add some lat pull downs or seat pulls to go with it. So that's on one of the days that we do things. Then we turn around on Tuesday and we'll do leg exercises on Wednesday. And that's a little different than the sample on here. So this sample is a little different. I'm just telling you what we do right now. On Tuesday, we do legs. On Wednesday, we do back and shoulders. Then on Thursday, we start back over and we do bench on Thursday, but we do heavy bench. And then on Fridays, we do heavy legs. One thing that when I was coming along, they never really discussed, you had workouts during the week and you worked your legs and you might not work them again. Studies have shown that on your leg exercises, which I'm sorry, I don't do squats, so it just comes up naturally for me to talk about it. But if you do leg exercise of any kind, you need to do them at least twice a week. And if you hadn't thought about it, even though you think you're using more back, a deadlift is supposed to be a leg exercise. So you can work those exercises that deal with deadlift at least twice a week, because those legs need more work. So you need to consider that when you're doing leg stuff, that you do it at least twice a week. These samples, like I said, there's nothing in stone. This is just something I had and I put on here. So if you have any questions about workouts, we can find you any workout you want. One of the hardest things with workouts is the fact that not every athlete is on the same level. You might have one. Just take, for example, this morning, we did our bench workout, and today was heavy day. I have two young men that work out with each other that are pretty much close. And then I've got another gentleman that actually works out with me, because the other group is bench pressing 175 and he's bench pressing 250. So you've got to arrange your workouts for your athletes and understand that everybody's not in the same weight category as far as lifting, not body weight. So that's another thing you have to consider, and make sure you have space to set up multiple workout areas, multiple benches or deadlift areas. And like I said, that's a lot. I've jumped around with workouts. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. I just want to make sure I hit a few highlights on workouts. The biggest thing is make sure you plan it out for what works for your athletes and the time period you have. Division and competition. Your athletes, like I said, always shall be placed in division according to gender, age, ability, and weight class. Sometimes you will run into situations in Georgia. I'm speaking from Georgia's aspect now. You might sometimes not be able to stick exactly to this, because you might combine weight classes. And I think I've seen on Jennifer's where we use next lift, we've combined some weight classes, and you can do that because the formula is going to correct that for you. So you can combine weight classes to make sure you've got the athlete has somebody to compete against. One thing that if you're ever wanting to go to the next level, you need to understand with special limits, you can have up to 8 people in a division. Many years ago, we went to Raleigh for World Games, and some of the family members got upset because they didn't win gold, silver, or bronze. But they were in a weight class that had 6 people. And on our state level, we always set it up where there was no more than 3 in a weight class. And so we really hurt them in the long run, because we didn't teach them that you've got to work and compete to be able to win one of those medals. And then when we got to World Games, they had 5 people in the weight class and they didn't win the medal, and they were upset. So make sure you do understand, if you step outside of your state, that you can have weight classes or divisions that go up to at least 8 athletes. I've only seen it once where we've had 7 in a group, but usually it stays around 5. But we try to get it where there's a competition going on. Your age divisioning, at y'all state, the minimum age is 16. You can start at 14, but in y'all state it's 16, and then y'all have it set up with seniors or 16 to 21 and masters 22 and over. Your weight classes, these are the weight classes you'll go by at your state, your local, your state, your USA Games, your USAPL, wherever you go, these are the weight classes you'll follow here. You can go on to the next one. Scorecard, we just put this in just so you can see a scorecard that we use. On this one, it doesn't have the squat on it, but if you go to a USA Games, or maybe if you just decide to lift a USAPL event outside of Special Olympics, which while I'm talking about the USAPL does have a Special Olympics category, your athletes can register with them, $10. And then they have a classification for them. And on that scorecard, it'll have all 3 lifts lifted, your squat, bench, deadlift. And basically, this is used for the officials. When you're doing the weigh-ins, they'll have all this filled out, and you have to give your opening attempt. The only one you have to put on here is your first attempt, and then they use this scorecard throughout the event to keep up with your lifts each time to make sure if you got which one you got, the first attempt, second attempt, because just remember when you're lifting, you can always go up, but you can't go down. So they use these cards to keep up where you're at. They're also using the computer at the same time. Weigh-ins. If you go to Jennifer, you might step in and let me know about your state, but if you go to a Southeast Regional, USA Games, or anything like that, your weigh-ins have to be 2 hours prior to the event. Now, at our state games, probably just like y'all, with so many lifters, we weigh in the night before. Those that are day-only lifters, they come in and weigh in that morning. But if you step out and go to the USA Games, a World Games, or either just a USAPL event, your weigh-in will be 2 hours prior to the event. The weigh-in of the competitors must take place before the competition, like it says on here, but usually it's 2 hours prior to that event. When you weigh in, and it's done different at each place, you should have, when you weigh in, the first thing you do is you have your equipment checked. The officials check your weight equipment, your belts, your socks. They'll make sure your singlet is correct. That way the athlete doesn't get on stage and then they get pulled off. That destroys an athlete. If that athlete gets out, because they don't understand what they've done wrong. So if you get there for weigh-in and that belt is not a correct belt, you can correct that prior to the event ever starting, so that athlete is not ever discouraged or upset when the event starts. They're ready to go. So as a coach, this is a good time to make sure everything's in line, everything is set up correct, so we can help that athlete be as successful as possible. Even long socks. I've seen it, state games, local games. You get out there and the athlete goes to lift and they have short socks on and the official stops them and then they can't lift. And really we shouldn't let them lift because it's a safety hazard with the blood. But that's our fault for not getting those things checked ahead of time. So now that athlete is scrambling trying to find a pair of socks that's long enough. So, try to make sure these things are checked ahead of time. Check with your state to make sure what they're going to check, what they expect. But you should always be ready to have your belt, your socks, your singlet, your wraps, all those things checked because, and I know you're thinking, well, why the wraps have to be checked? The wraps can only be a certain length. And those are in the rules that tells you how long. And usually at the USA Games, we have a table and it's marked and we roll them out to make sure they're not stretched too long. And those things are checked. And the biggest thing it does, it cuts out any problems once the event actually starts. The other thing that's very important is make sure if you have a lifter that has any kind of, trying to think of what it's just, for example, they need blocks. It's on here also. If they need blocks, let them know. If they have an arm that doesn't lock out all the way, these type things you can tell the officials, they can write it down on the scorecard, and then they don't get penalized for not being able to lock out an arm that we know can't lock out anyway. But also be mindful of the fact that officials at your USA Games and a lot of the games that are out there, they watch. So if you tell me that arm can't lock out on a bench press, then it shouldn't be able to lock out on a deadlift. Make sure you're honest with the officials. They'll work with you, but this also helps the athlete be successful. So during that weigh-in time, make sure you let the officials know all these things and they can mark it on their cards.
Okay, in Arkansas, guys, we implemented the equipment check this year at Summer Games, and we will continue that. We typically do weigh-in. I think this last year we did it an hour before the competition began, or maybe it was the day of registration we tried to do it. But we will let you know ahead of the competition when weigh-in and equipment check will be.
Yeah, with what Jennifer said, a lot of times it's easier to weigh in during registration and the day before because we can go ahead and division. Division is what takes so long, and if we can get the competition started on time, it runs a lot smoother. So, however you do it, whatever works best for y'all, but that's good that you're checking equipment because you don't want the athletes to go to a competition and not understand what's going on. All right, general rules for competition. During any competition organized on a platform or stage, the only ones that need to be on that platform or stage is the coach and athlete. We have started in Georgia at ours, and then it's the same way at USA Games, World Games, USAPLs, other events. We have a designated spot for the coach. We still allow the coach, and I know y'all do in Arkansas, we allow the coach to set up the athletes. We'll even let them lift off, but then that coach has to move to get out of the way for the spotters that we have there. Also for your judges to be, your officials to be able to see. And we mark a spot in the back and one in the front. Some places only have one location. At World Games, where Jennifer went to Dubai, the spot was in the front. And the reason we like it in the front is then the athlete has a visual of you. A lot of times that athlete relaxes when they know that coach is there and that coach is working with them and talking to them. One of the things that a lot of coaches do not do is they don't coach. You're there to coach. There's nothing in the rules that said you can't holler, scream, yell, get after them as far as giving them positive instructions to help them out. When you get in that box, I have a few lifters that when that head official says start, my athlete will sit there until I say start because I want to make sure they don't miss those signals. So as a coach, you can get out there and talk all you want to. But if you ever tell them to rack it or do anything else, you make sure that official has already done that. But you are allowed to coach and talk from that platform, but you don't need anybody else there with you. What we run into sometimes is when we're staging, there might be a coach there that's got 10 athletes or more, and he brings all of them with him with this, and there's only one of them lifting. It sort of gets everything cluttered up, and the competition can't run smoothly. So try to have somebody helping you, an assistant coach, a volunteer, whoever, to help with those others that aren't lifting, so you don't the stage and everything gets crowded, and plus then everybody else can't see. First round attempt should be submitted at the weigh-ins. If you go to, and I apologize, I don't know how y'all turn in your next lifts. I see on here it says a lifter must submit second and third attempts within 1 minute. And that's true. If you go to a USA Games, a National Games, World Games, I have seen them put a clock on the official's table. But now we have what we call next lift. And on that next lift in the top right hand corner of the screen, it has a timer. And you have 1 minute to turn in your next lift. So make sure you go ahead and plan ahead of time and have an idea of which direction your lifter is going to go. You know, if they start out, and I'm going to talk in pounds because that's easier for all of us, I would think, because I don't use kilos every day. But if my first bench press is 100 pounds and I know my max is only 150, well, I need to know where I'm going to go to on my second lift. And then if I'm competing against somebody, my third lift, I should have on my piece of paper what I know they can do, and then what I can stretch them out to try to win a medal. So if you've got those things already written down, you're ready to turn in that next lift after your athlete makes their lift. If they don't make the lift, you can still go up. You just can't go down. Say, for example, if your lifter misses a lift because they missed the official signal, well, you know they can lift that, so you can go up. The other thing, and the reason all this is important, is a lot of us now are using next lift little coupon slips. We have, when you go to weigh-in, they give you a book of, I'm trying to figure out, a little book with your
attempt cards.
There you go. Thank you, Jennifer. Attempt cards. And we go ahead and fill those out. because you have to turn that attempt card in after each lift. So if you've already got it written down, you're not scrambling to figure out what you're going to do next. But that's something we use at the next levels, and some of the states are starting to use those also. I'm good. You can go ahead. Let's see. Okay, talking about dropping weights. One of the things, y'all don't squat, but I'm going to go ahead and just mention it because some of your lifters that I've been fortunate to work with 2 lifters from the state of Arkansas at World Games. And even though they didn't squat at the state level, when they went to World Games, both of them squatted. One of them actually won a gold medal in squat. And one of the things you have to understand and teach them in all lifts, if you cannot handle the weight, do not let it go. If it's a deadlift, a squat, a bench, you can't take your hands off the bar. If you take your hands off the bar and don't hold on to the weight, it causes problems for everybody. Your side judges, your side spotters, all of them. But the biggest thing that they talk about is on the deadlift is you cannot drop the bar intentionally. They see these videos of folks doing this Olympic lifting, and they throw that bar, they do the clean and jerk, and then they drop it on the floor and makes that loud noise. If you do that, you're automatically disqualified. If the officials see that it slipped and it fell out of their hands, no harm, no foul. They're not going to say anything. But if they see one intentionally drop it, they're going to scratch them from the event because somebody could seriously get hurt. All right. I'm good. Whew. We finally get into the actual lifts. All right, bench press. On the bench press, the day you go to check in, get registered for your event, have your athletes, if the bench is available, if you're having to we have to get bench heights because we adjust our bench for every single lifter. But let them lay on that bench to find out how it feels because all the benches are different. They might work out on one that's a wider back. They get to the event, it could be skinny. The height of it could be different. Just check all those things, let them get comfortable with it. On here on this slide, it talks about pinkies on the rings. Each lifter sets up differently. A lot of times we talk about a thumb length from the rough and the smooth. Then you get to a competition and the bar don't have the rough and the smooth. So you just got to work with the athletes. You find out what their grip setup is. You need to document that. So when you get there, you can work with that athlete. And the easiest thing to do is if you know where their setup should be, you take your hand and wrap around that bar to the furthest point, and then they put their hand up against yours. Then they're not having to guess with that bar, especially if the bar is different from what you work out with. And each bar is different. Your competition bars, if you have one of those, they stay uniform. There's no different. One of the things you have to remember, and I don't see a lot of lifters every now and then, is that the outermost ring, your hands cannot be outside of that outermost ring. So that's the only really thing on the setup. When you're bench pressing, your thumbs have to be wrapped on the bar. You have some, if you go in the gym, you'll see lifters that don't wrap their thumbs, but you have to wrap the thumb on bench press. As far as your lift offs, we do allow in the state and local games a lift off from the coach. If you go to USA Games or World Games, you cannot lift off. They have spotters. They have professional spotters there that do this all the time. But in our games, you can. So go ahead and work out with your athletes, what the triggers are. Are they going to do the 1, 2, 3, the 3, 2, 1? But you work with them so they know what that lift off is, because you need to lift it off as smooth as you can and then get out of the way so the official can see. Because the longer you're there, the longer it takes for that official to give them the start signal. And so on bench press, you have the 3 commands. You have start, and that start signal will not be given until the bar is held by the athlete under control, motionless. Once they get the start, they're going to go down to their chest. Once it goes to their chest and stops and it's motionless, then that head official will give them the press. If the athlete takes the bar down to their chest and they sink it into their chest, they should not get a press signal until that bar comes to a standstill. It's got to be motionless. You see this sometimes in females. They will sink it into their breast. The men will sink it into their stomach sometimes. So have them work on taking it down to their chest and hold it motionless, and so they can get that quicker press signal. Once they press it and they come all the way up, then they will get a rack signal. And those are the 3 commands. I think the next slide will talk about disqualifications. If we can move it. All right, I'm not going to read these. I'm just going to I'm going to go through it from the beginning to the end. The biggest thing is when you start the lift, you're going to get the press signal. If you do anything before the signals, it's automatically a no lift. All right, so we're starting out. You get a press signal. We're good to go. You go down to the chest. Once you get on the chest, if you come up before you get a signal, no lift. If you start up with that bar, once it starts moving upward, it has to continuously move upward. If you stop, but don't go down and then continue up, you're fine. As long as that bar does not go down. And the officials, this is where your side officials are very important, because once that bar starts to move, when it's moving up, if it gets to a point and it stops, but then moves on, it's fine. But if it stops and takes a little dip and goes up, it's a no lift. It has to move up the entire time. Now, like I said, if it stops, as long as it doesn't go down, it is fine. So the question comes in a lot of times about uneven lockout. You do not have to have a even lockout anymore. If I'm going up, and the hard part about this training today is we're not in the weight room. So I'm having to move around, and maybe you can see me on the screen, but if I'm going up and my right hand starts up a little bit further than my left, and then all of a sudden my left starts coming up and then I'll finish, I'm fine. They do not have to lock out at the same time. That is an old rule that used to be in play, but it's not anymore. But when you're moving up, your arm has to lock completely out. So your elbow has to lock out. Now, if you have an athlete that can only go this far, then we need to know that ahead of time. If it's only here, that's fine. But some of those things are very important when you're doing those weigh-ins, because the head official already knows that. And then remind them before that athlete starts. All right, we've got all our signals. We've done those things. What are the officials looking for? The head has to stay on the bench. The head cannot come up. That rule has changed several times, but pretty much, especially, it's always been the head has to stay on the bench. Your butt has to stay on the bench. You can't arch and your butt comes up. Your feet have to stay flat on the floor. Now, one thing that has changed, if my foot is flat on the floor, if it rolls up, it's a no lift. If the toes come up, it's a no lift. If the heel comes up, it's no lift. But if my foot slides completely forward or backwards and never comes off that floor, it is fine. It used to be, it said it could only move the length of your foot. I don't think they have a length on it now, but if that foot slides forward and never comes off the floor, it's no problem. That is not a disqualification anymore. And one of the reasons for no shorts in the bench press is folks were starting to wear real baggy shorts. So when they lifted, if their butt come off, their shorts still rode the bench, and it gave them an advantage. So those are some things there. I think I've pretty much hit everything. One thing I will say on the bench press before I stop, if you're going up and you as a coach, I'm going to blame you as a coach. You set your athlete up and they're too far back. That's your fault. All right. It's my fault if I do it. And I've done it before because I've been so excited for the lifter and trying to get them ready to lift that I didn't check their placement of their head. I'm checking their feet to make sure they're in place. I'm doing all those things. And then I get off to the side and I realize they're too far back. Well, if they're going up and they hit that rack, as long as they hit that rack and they keep going forward, going up, it's a good lift. It's fine. They just can't hit the rack and go down. They can't hit the rack or put the bar against the rack. So that would be the only other thing that I could think of as far as a disqualification. And I saw that about my accent, and I told Jennifer that ahead of time, that my Southern drawl is a lot worse than y'all's.
For the record, that would be my mother.
Well, she's heard me before. What's interesting, you go to China and try to talk to them, they have no clue what I'm saying. All right. Any questions? I see 2 in there, Jennifer. Is there anything I need to answer? Because I do talk fast a lot of times. We good?
Nope, we're good. No questions on there right now. And the chat was just Mom.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Deadlift. We've always said the competition does not start until the weight hits the floor. One of the things I want to talk about before we start with the deadlift is a leg exercise. It gets turned into a back exercise sometimes because our athletes try to do a lot heavier weight on deadlift because they want to look like everybody else. I want to lift as much as I can. One of the things that really helps deadlift is actually a squat exercise. Make sure you heard me. It's a squat exercise. I'm not telling y'all to squat, which I do like squats, but it's called wall squats. And what you do is you take your athletes and you teach them these things because they can do this at home on their own. And basically what you do is you get your legs shoulder width apart, might be a little bit further, and you walk up to the wall and you sit down like you're sitting in a chair. And you get that athlete to go down and break parallel because you're working your quads and you really want to work those thigh muscles. And that's something they can do every other day at home. They don't have to go to a gym. These are things they can do during this time. A lot of people have made videos to help our athletes. I think Jennifer still got it, or we can find it, but we have videos of exercises and things they can be doing at home right now with no weights. But the wall squat's very good because it builds those leg muscles. So when they start doing the deadlift, they're not dependent on their back. Because one of the problems with deadlift is you start getting some muscle pulls in your lower back because they're using all their back muscles instead of their legs. We sometimes have as many injuries or more injuries with deadlifting than we do with squats. I'm not telling y'all to do squats, but you can get just as many with the deadlift because of the fact we don't build those leg muscles. All right, I've said enough so far on that. So think about that with those wall squats. They're really good. And like I said, it's easy for them to do at home. We used it at World Games, and you would have thought we killed our athletes, but they all bragged about it, and they still tell us they use them at home now. On your deadlift, it's down at the bottom, but there's 2 types of deadlifts. There's a traditional and a sumo. The one that we're doing on the screen right now is probably more sumo than traditional. Anytime you put your hands on the inside of your legs, it's going to be a sumo. The wider you get, the less you don't have as far to have to pull the bar, basically. Some of our athletes like this, some of them don't, but it's something you can try. Traditional is your feet are going to be placed on the inside of his hands that are on that screen. You basically have your feet shoulder width apart. You grab the bar on the outside of your legs, and you have the bar right up to your legs when you start. So you're going to start out with your feet. You're either going to decide you're going to be a wide stance or in tight. Your hands should be set up on traditional right against your legs, right on the outside of it. You don't want a wide grip. You want everything tight. You want everything tight in on your shoulders. You don't want it where your arms are way out. You want everything tight in one area. So that when you go down, your body is acting like a spring. You want to stay tight and pop off the bottom with power through your legs. Your hands, you don't have to use an over-under, but what it helps with, it keeps the bar from rolling on you. So strongly encourage the over-under. It does not matter which hand is over, which one's under. It's whichever one's comfortable for the athlete. And then the bend of the knees. This is where that wall squat comes in, because when you're deadlifting, you should approach the bar Once your legs touch that bar, you should squat all the way down as if you were sitting in a chair. Your back should be flat, head up, and then you grab the bar. You should never lean forward. This picture here, and we talk to this gentleman sometimes, they get in the habit of leaning forward, and then they use back when they start to come up. They should have a good straight back, and then when they start that lift, drive that head straight up. So we've got our feet in place, our knees are bent, we've squatted down, we look like we're sitting in a chair, and then our head's up, ready to deadlift. Now, on the deadlift, a lot of times if you've got that front judge, official, the athlete wants to look at them. They don't need to look at the official. They need to look over the top of his head or her head, because they want their head up to keep shoulders back. If their head's down, then they're going down like I'm doing in the screen here. But you want shoulders up, chest out, and drive up through your head. So everything's legs and push up through your head. You pull straight up. Once you stand up at the top, your shoulders do not have to be back. You don't have to lean back. They just have to be even and parallel. Once you get straight up, a lot of athletes want to shrug it or they want to lean back. But if they lean back, then you're going to get into one of those disqualification rules we'll talk about in a minute. The only command in deadlift is once they get to the top is down. The thing we run into sometimes is the athlete will approach that bar, they'll get ready, and they won't start. So you as a coach, you might have to holler, go, start, whatever you want to tell them. But the only command they're going to get is down, and they have to take that bar down to the ground under control. You can go to the next one. All right, disqualifications on the deadlift. Missing your signal, putting it down before they tell you. We'll start there. Moving your feet. If you pick your feet up during your deadlift, if your foot slides a little bit, they're usually not going to say anything, but if it has a major slide, which is hard to do, they're going to say something. If you roll up on your toes, that is not a disqualification. As long as your feet are not moved, if you don't displace your foot, wherever you start with your feet have to be in that same spot when you finish. If you don't stand up erect, if you don't get up all the way, say you're deadlifting and you get to the top, and instead of getting your shoulders up, you're still leaning forward, you got them rolled forward, you got to get up. So you as a coach are yelling the whole time, up, 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 stand up tall. And then their knees have to be locked out. If they don't lock out the knees, then it's a disqualification. If they get to the top and they lean back, most of the time that causes the knees to unlock. So if they get that lean back, if they lean way back, the knees will come unlocked, and then it's a disqualification because they didn't lock out correctly. The other thing is supporting the bar on your thighs when you're going up. If you start off the bottom and you're driving up, and all of a sudden you see them lean back and they're holding the bar and they start bouncing it, then that's going to be a disqualification because they're using their legs to get the weight up. Now, if they've got it against their legs and they're driving and they never stop, it's no problem. If they ever see that bar mashing against that leg to the point you can see flesh mashed in, then you can tell they've got that bar propped on those legs. So you want to drive all the way up to the top. I think I covered everything. Jennifer took off somewhere else to another slide. You can't prop it on your legs. You can't move your feet. You got to lock your shoulders out. You cannot unlock your knees. I think I got everything. And you can't drop the weight. You can't drop the weight, and you have to wait for the down signal. So I think we've got everything covered. Yep. All right. One thing I will cover real quick, and it's because I hope we have coaches and athletes, and you have aspirations to go outside of the state games. If you go to USA games, you're going to have 3 officials. So if you get to an event, or if you just go and watch and you see the 3 officials, when any lift starts, your 2 side officials will have their hands in the air. And if they don't ever drop them, it's for one of two, it's for rules reasons. They won't ever let you start a lift unless you've got everything done right. For example, on bench, your butt's on the seat, your feet are flat on the ground, those type things. That's the good thing about having the 2 side officials. they're making sure athletes are ready before they're even given the signal to start. So that's some of the things that you get when you step up to your USA games or USA PLs. Having those other two officials help out as making sure our athletes are in place and ready to correctly complete the lift. Because you don't want them to start and they're going to get a no lift before they ever get started because they didn't start the correct way. So those are some of the things that you'll see different sometimes with the three officials, because they're all working together. And then also we run into it a lot of times. You have one official see something and the other two don't. So 2 out of 3 is good. So it's not always bad to have more than one official. Extra eyes helps our athletes out and just gives them a positive experience in the events. Jennifer and Irvin, I think I've covered everything. Y'all know of anything I've missed or any questions?
No. Does anyone have any questions for Todd right now? If you do, put it in the Q&A box. Felicia said, thank you, great training. Renee said, great job, thank you, Todd. We have a Skip said, thanks, Todd.
No problem. Like I said, anything I can do to help. And I've told Jennifer, we'll travel. We like to travel here. We're going to Arkansas. We're going to Colorado as long as everything works out in August to lift in an event. So we'll do anything we can to help you out.
Ann said, awesome, thanks. Steve said, thanks, coach. We've got some in the chat box. Give me a second, guys. Nancy asked, is there a test after this to certify us? The answer is no. We hope you just listened really well on this.
Jennifer, if somebody wants a test in one of those packets I sent you, the very back of it, I've got my responses or checks on it, but there's a little test that you can give them and they just to look at to see how they think they would do, but it's on there.
Okay, I do remember seeing that. Christy said, I agree, great training. Sherry said, thank you. I'm going to have to look up some of these terms and find videos. Amber, so informative, thank you. Lots of great info. Thank you for taking time to do this for all of us. Absolutely, we agree with Elizabeth. Lisa said she learned a lot, thank you. And Skip would love all information. Skip, I will make sure I get that to you. Rihanna, thank you. I'm a Nebraska, Iowa girl, but love some SOAR. Thanks, Rihanna. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Somebody mentioned about videos. If you go to the Special Olympics webpage and go to powerlifting, there should be videos on there because probably they're old, but they're still good videos. But myself and Dion, probably 5 or 6 years ago, we did videos on every single one of the events, the squat, bench, deadlift, and then there's even some supplemental lifts on there also. But if you go to and I'd have to remember, but if you go to Special Olympics International website or Special Olympics
right.
North America, it's on there. It should be.
Here, can you see that, the web browser?
I can.
So this is the resources page for Special Olympics. And if you scroll down to Sport Essentials, Sports and Coaching, you have to kind of go through a couple things. Scroll down all the way to Powerlifting. And on here, you've got your coaching guide. That's where it's going to be pretty detailed. Then you've got fact sheets and then your rules and then any changes that have been made since then. But this powerlifting guide is a really good resource and it does have a lot of videos built into it. It is from 2011, so the graphics are probably outdated a little bit. I'm trying to get to, hold please. A record chart for training, has a lot of good coaching materials in here, especially if this is new. But then once you get into the lifts, which I'm trying to get there, once you get into the lifts and even the equipment, it goes into detail, but then also has a video to show you exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah, and it shows you belts and wraps. That's Dion. That's one of my lifters. He's a super young man.
And then you just click on the video, and there's just a few seconds, and it shows you exactly how to wrap a wrist wrap. They're very detailed, and they did a great job with this. Do we get certificates for this training, or do we just keep up with it ourselves? And you will get a certificate emailed to you in the next few days for attending this training. And you will get PD credit hours if that's something that you need also. All right. James said thanks. Any other questions for Todd before we turn it over to Irvin?
And I'll give you
Todd,
guys.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank y'all.
Definitely appreciate it, Todd. All that knowledge. I know there's a lot of information there. As they were saying, please use those resources, guys, because Todd was only to say so much within this hour. I know he could have gone for at least 12 more hours on all of the information for you guys, but we greatly appreciate your time, Todd. If you can just hold on for maybe 2 more minutes.
Oh, I'm good. Go ahead.
All right. So again, questions and answers for Todd, please put them in the box. Just one thing I wanted to share, I'm looking at the names on the call, and I'm pretty sure everyone's aware of the new coaching progression plan that we're going with, but I'm just going to show you guys where to find it real fast. But if you go to the website, specialolympicsarkansas.org, you'll click on Get Involved. Then at the bottom, you'll see the Coaches tab right here. And right here, of course, if there's any other trainings, we have about, I think this is our 7th webinar, coaches training. We have a few more you can just schedule right here. But at the bottom down here, I know Todd was talking about his workout templates that he has. These are some pretty much generic templates that you can possibly plug in some of those powerlifting workouts in those. So these are good resources, as well as some small things down here as far as the coach's guidebook, which helps you implement health and fitness into your workouts as well. Concussion cards, if you're already taking your online concussion certification, these are pretty much cards that remind you of things to look for. So just small resources down here for you guys. But what we're looking for is right here, the coach training and progression plan. And this is pretty much an overview of the plan. Whenever you see something about recertification with elective courses, these are the courses that we are allowing here at the bottom. Of course, if any coaches or teachers have any online courses that would be beneficial to our coaches here at Special Olympics Arkansas, please send those courses to us, and we'll definitely try to plug them in. But we're definitely looking for more courses. In the gold level, I won't go over it, but these are the tactical courses that are mentioned in the training progression plan. But you'll click right here, download this entire checklist. And again, since we're a little over time, I won't go over everything, but if you have any questions, please contact us. But you'll see the different levels. Of course, we have a certified coach level, then we'll go into bronze, silver, and gold level. And all the requirements are here. And we're asking that for any requirement, please make sure you check off the box and attach any form with this sheet that we need. So it pretty much be a one-stop shop for us. I won't go deep into it. I think everyone on this call, most people on this call have seen this already per the other calls, but please, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to contact us. Again, Todd, I don't think I see any questions. Jen, do you see any?
No, but I do want to, I'm going to steal the screen back from you, Irv.
Yep, you got it.
I do want to show everyone on the call where we have our local competitions as of right now. We've added several areas this last year that have stepped up and found a passion for powerlifting. And so this year we have area 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, and 17 all host powerlifting competitions in their areas. You are able to go to a different area if you're, say, from 15 but want to come up to 10 and go to area 10's competition. You can go to multiple areas. So if you want to attend 4 or 5 of them, you're more than welcome to do that. Just make sure you pre-register. And then our state competition is held at Summer Games.
And Jennifer, also, you know, we have the couple of meets there in Tennessee every year. And then we have the Southeast Regionals in Atlanta in February. So they're always welcome. I mean, I'll be glad to send you all that information. So if anybody ever wanted to step out and come over, I'd love to have you.
Thank you so much.
Greatly appreciated that. But I think if we don't have any more questions, again, Todd, a big thank you for jumping on the call and sharing your knowledge with our coaches here in Arkansas. Of course, you're always welcome. So, you know, just reach out when you're ready to come over. But again, remember next Tuesday, we have our tennis call, tennis training webinar with the USTA. So if you're able to jump on that next Tuesday, please do so. But again, Todd, thank you. Coaches, thank you all for jumping on the call, and we will talk to y'all soon.
Thank you, Todd, again. And
Yeah.
everyone have a good day.